Have you ever felt your quiet nature set you apart? Why is it that the loudest person in the room often seems like they get whatever they want? As I grow older, I'm now noticing that my quiet nature is my superpower. I'm learning that people are getting increasingly drawn towards me because I have this magnetism about me. This quiet confidence that I developed is this show and not tell type energy. It's this aura that attracts people. And in this video, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about this quiet confidence and how introverts can utilize this superpower to attract people towards them and be socially attractive. So the first principle I have is owning your emotions. So it's the stoic principle of controlling what you can control. And that begins with owning your emotions. So a lot of people love watching Thomas Shelby in Peaky Blinders. And he's super cool. He is not scared of death. But that's only because he got to the point where he nearly died to not be afraid of death. And not a lot of us on YouTube are going to experience that. So we're just not going to reach that point. However, one way in we can control our emotions is by understanding our triggers, understanding what makes us happy, what makes us sad. And in turn, we can control how we react towards those triggers. So I love the NBA. I love the Golden State Warriors, and I want to talk about Draymond Green and Stephen Curry. They're the two leaders on the team, and they're so different. So Draymond Green, he is loud, hard-headed, and has a short temper. Stephen Curry, he is quiet, confident, and a killer. So I want to take the example of Draymond Green. Last season, there was a game with the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Warriors were playing them for the first time, and Klay Thompson and Jaden McDaniels on the other team got into a scuffle. So both sides swarmed the court to try to separate them. Rudy Gobert got in the middle and tried to push them apart, but then Draymond Green came out from behind, put Rudy Gobert in a chokehold like that, and ripped his neck back. Dumb act. It was so violent, and it got him a 10-game suspension. So everyone knows Draymond Green has a short temper, and he is not afraid to be violent. He has a history of it. It goes way back to 2016 when he came back from the 10-game suspension. Everyone knows this. They took advantage of his short temper. So they were playing the Phoenix Suns, and Yusuf Nurkic on the other team, he tried to bait him into a foul. So Draymond Green flailed his arms and whacked Yusuf Nurkic in the face. And that in turn led to Draymond Green getting suspended indefinitely and getting counseling for that. So he's such an integral basketball player to the Warriors system. He defends positions 1 to 5, he play makes and gets Stephen Curry open and other players open as well. So his absence was so felt. And that led to the Warriors going to the 10th seed out of the 15 teams in the Western Conference. That's abysmal. Other teams knew Draymond Green was short-tempered and could not control his emotions, so they took advantage of that. And in contrast to Stephen Curry. So I remember in Game 6 of the semifinals against the Houston Rockets in 2019, Stephen Curry scored 0 points in the first half. And everyone was thinking, is he cold? Is he washed? What's going on? So Stephen Curry, he channeled this anger. During halftime in the locker room, he would go on his phone and scroll through Twitter to see what people were saying about him. And it was a lot of hate messages for sure. And he channeled that anger through the second half of the game. He ignited for 33 points. People called it the Curry Flurry. And that sent the Houston Rockets home and the Warriors to the Western Conference Finals. So we need to control what we can control. And those are our emotions. By controlling our emotions, that helps us interact with people a lot better. So I know for me, I love my mom, but one of my triggers is feeling like a child. So I remember telling her one time that I was going out to a wedding and she said, Wesley, be sure not to drink and drive. And that really triggered me. I yelled at her and I feel so bad because of it. So I was thinking back to myself that what happened, what triggered me, and it was this insecurity that I had that I was a baby, that even for me in my mid-20s, that she was still treating me like a child, and I didn't like that. There's this part of me that wants to be independent and free and as an adult, but that's where the trigger comes from, of me feeling like a baby. But mom did nothing wrong. She's just being a mother. And drinking and driving, of course, is responsible. But that just set me off. So I understand that now as my trigger. The next time that I go on a wedding, I'll take a deep breath and respond politely with a yes. I know inside my heart is still going to be kind of mad, and that's something I have to work on. But it's becoming aware of that trigger and changing the response to it that's going to help you control your emotions. The second principle I have is practice active listening. So why is it whenever we have those conversations with the people that we love, we feel like the most important people in the world? And that's because the people who practice active listening make us feel that way. They do such a great job at making us feel like we're the only and most important person in the world. And I know for me, as naturally quiet person, I lead with curiosity. I ask great questions and just dig deeper. That in turn lets people talk even more. And there was a study I was listening to on modern wisdom where if a guy and a girl are out on a date and the guy ends up talking more, the guy will come back home and tell his friends that, oh, the date was so great. And the girl will go back home and tell her friends that the date was awful. He kept talking about himself. So people really do love talking about themselves. The guy talked about himself way more, and the girl wanted a chance to share. So for me, there is this balance that we have to play, especially as introverts, that we have to go for a 40-60 balance of asking questions, and that in turn helps us think and set up the next question. And of course, we can jump in and provide our own input as well. Because obviously, if someone's just talking way too much in a conversation, it's not going to be fun for you. So one of my favorite games I used to play as a kid was The Last of Us. Y'all know it as a TV show now, but for me, The Last of Us was one of my favorite games on the PS4. And it was this apocalyptic world where this man, Joel, finds this kid, Ellie, and they try to save the world because she ends up being the cure for all of humanity. So throughout the game, Joel practices active listening by getting to know her, getting to know what her life was like before the apocalypse, what music she likes. Turns out that she had this pun book that she wrote puns in, and he really got to know her. And throughout the story, they developed this father-daughter like bond. So the game was fun because it wasn't exactly a horror game, but it really caught the players' hearts of this bond that they developed over time because Joel listened to her. He got to know her as a human being and not simply as the cure for all of humanity. And so spoilers, because it's a 10-year-old game, you've had a chance to play it. Joel chooses to save Ellie rather than sacrificing her to save all of humanity. So if you have someone to care about, pay attention to small things. Make them feel like the most important person in the world. And if you're meeting someone new too, you can start with this. You can start with remembering their name. I fully believe that when you get to know someone's name, that transitions them from stranger to a friend. And make sure to try to say their name about 3 times in a conversation. You don't have to say it 3 times in a row because that's just really creepy, but just sprinkle it here and there. Like, where's your address, Wesley? So stuff like that, just sprinkle it throughout and it gets you in the habit of saying their name. And I feel like we're in the day and age of where the bar is set so low that people are always telling me, oh, I'm just so bad with names. And if you do remember the name, it gives you that chance to stand out from the crowd. And that's what's going to make people like you, is because you do remember the small things. And that in turn forms this small bond between you and this other person. And principle number 3 is practicing kindness. We are our own worst self-critics, and it's so weird that we're harsher on ourselves than we are on other people. There are things I say to myself I would not say out loud to someone else at all. Like, you're stupid, you're an idiot, you're a klutz. We're not our own cheerleader. It's crazy. And when we practice kindness on ourselves, that in turn can help us practice kindness on others. So something I've been doing is whenever I catch myself saying these negative things to me, I try to be aware of it and then change the language that goes around it. So instead of saying I'm an idiot, I'll say I made a mistake and I'm going to learn from it. So it's stuff by that the mind is always going to be negative, but you can catch those things and turn it positive and treat you kindly. And that in turn will manifest positive behavior outwards. In Avatar: The Last Airbender, Prince Zuko, he goes through this whole identity shift throughout the series. So he started off as the villain trying to capture the Avatar, but throughout the series, we learn why he's doing it. So it turns out that he's trying to please his father, who is the dictator of the entire Fire Nation. People are being oppressed and they hate it. And Prince Zuko, it turns out he is actually inherently naturally kind and he cares about his people, and he starts being compassionate on himself first. He doesn't see himself as a lackey, as a soldier, but as simply as now a prince. He sees himself more of a prince and royalty. By season 3, he sees the Avatar and what they're trying to do, which is bring peace to the world, and he wants to be a part of that. And so he becomes a part of their team, defects away from the Fire Nation, and becomes this more kind and compassionate person that people really love and enjoy. He went from someone that hated the world to someone that loved the world. And I remember growing up, I was just so shy. I grew up almost mute. My parents were worried about me, but obviously I turned out okay. I was so scared of connecting with people. I didn't know how to connect with people. It was just so hard for me to communicate myself properly. And it wasn't until high school when I joined cross country where I felt my entire world opened up. So through that sport, the juniors and seniors there, they supported me. I remember when I first started running, I was last in line. I wasn't the the fittest, but I wasn't the fattest either. I remember the fastest guys would slow down and run beside me to make me feel that I'm not doing this alone. And they pushed me to be my best. And the same thing for my coach. He saw potential in me. He saw the best version of myself when I was unable to see that in me. And that in turn helped me see my best version of myself. And I just felt my whole world opening up. I felt like I had a community that was so supportive. I had peers above me, next to me, and even below me that I could try to pick up and encourage them to do their best. So when I was a senior, I stepped into that mentorship role to run beside the person last in the runs and make them feel not alone, that we're here to support each other. And it's all about being kind and compassionate. We have to do that for ourselves. And for me, that experience actually happened outward towards in, and that helped me eventually spread that out as well. So being kind is going to draw people in. People want to be around kind people. I think it's pretty obvious that the world needs more kind people. And the last principle I have is confidence comes through self-assurance. This confidence that we have is knowing in who we are. And in the Christian world, we have this thing called idols. So they used to be these little statues that represented other gods. But nowadays, these mean anything that we place on the highest value. So sex, money, and status. And we can see it everywhere, where in the red pill community, for example, they place women so high that when they get rejected, their whole world comes crashing down. And in the Silicon Valley, for example, I see status everywhere of people saying, oh, I work at Google, I work at Meta. And when they get laid off, their whole world comes crashing down too, because they place their whole identity in being a software engineer at Google. And when they're not a software engineer at Google anymore, who are they? So for me, I believe our inherent worth is in identity, and our identity as human beings created in the image of God. And that's a pretty convoluted saying, but I want to read from Genesis chapter 1, 26-27. So it says, "Then God said, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. So God created man in his own image, and in the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them." We have this special attention on ourselves from our creator that compared to the rest of the animals, we bear this image. We reflect God's nature. Imagine yourself in the African savannah and you see a lion hunting down a deer. No one's going to say that's murder. It's just simply a way of life. But if you go to the local neighborhoods in the inner city and you see a man shoot down another man, we're going to say that's evil and we need justice. There is something inside the human body that says that's wrong, that's evil. And I believe that it's this image of God inside of us that helps us see this good and evil, that we all have inherent dignity of right and wrong, and we need justice to be delivered. So if we had to break it down between materialism and spiritualism, I believe in the physical and I believe in the spiritual. If you only believe that everything's physical, then when evil happens, if a man's shooting down another man, you can only say that it's matter rearranging matter. It's just chemicals and molecules separating each other, and that's all that is. However, this nature that we have, this is what separates us from the other animals. We see that as evil. We have this sense of morality, and that's our self-worth. We are created in the image of God, and nothing can take us away from that. We know who we are. That way, when something tells us that we're not, whenever sex, money, status come into play, they can't deliver on that. If I'm lying on my deathbed, sex, money, and status can't help me, but God can. God can heal my soul. God can heal your soul. And that's what gives us confidence. Nothing's going to shake that ground because we know who we are. So quiet confidence and natural magnetism isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's understanding your emotions, being kind to yourself, knowing who you are and your self-worth, and practicing active listening and understanding someone else. I run a program that teaches leaders on time and energy management to help them be as productive as they can be. So if that's something you're interested in, you can click on the link down below and you can schedule a free call with me and see if you're a great fit for the program. So thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.